You're listening to Hanging, an original podcast series from the Mercury News in San Jose, California.
Last time on Hanging.
It seems like the sheriff department came in there and says, "Oh, you're one of us. Oh, I feel bad for you."
KW was not just one of my employees, he was a friend of mine.
They're just trying to get touchy with the kid. It's all about money, blah, 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 whatever, that kind of stuff. It's about more than the kid, it's about, monthly support and all this stuff.
And you believed him?
Yeah, it seemed like that.
I accepted it as a suicide with reports that I had from the coroners and from the people that were on the scene. But it's always been a case that kind of bothered me.
If you don't do your job the way you're supposed to do it, you leave too many unanswered questions.
What happened to the rope?
The rope had been removed at the scene and had not been submitted to the investigator.
I can't stop thinking about Josh.
Welcome back to Hanging, the mysterious case of the boy in the barn. I'm Julia Prodis Sulek from the Mercury News.
Chapter 3.
Hello?
Hello, is this Julia?
Yes, it is.
How you doing? Officer Lanning here with the Winona, Minnesota Police Department. How you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. Hey, can I just pull over? I'm driving. Winona, Minnesota is a 2-hour drive southeast of the Twin Cities, right across the Mississippi River from Wisconsin. A rocky bluff called Sugarloaf overlooks the city that hosts festivals for everything from Shakespeare to steamboats. I'm on Highway 61. I probably shouldn't be on. Should I pull over on the shoulder or just wait till I get to a cross street? I had come here from California to try to talk to Bobby Claver, the woman who may be able to unlock the mystery of how her stepson, 10-year-old Joshua Claver, ended up hanging in the family barn 28 years ago back in the Bay Area. I'm looking for a spot here.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So here I was, trying to find a place to pull over my rental car on this seemingly endless stretch of Minnesota highway to answer a call from the local police. Okay. All right, I'm on the side of the road.
Okay.
Yes, can you tell me your name again?
It's Officer Lanning with the Winona Police Department.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, you're welcome.
So what is it?
Well, apparently you're bothering someone here in Winona, and they don't appreciate it.
Oh boy. Sitting on the side of the road, I realized maybe it was foolish to fly out here. But I'm going to take us on a little detour to explain why I did. I want to tell you about the Facebook message that brought me here in the first place. The message to Josh's mother, Kathy Atkins, arrived from a stranger. It was spring 2014. "You don't know me, but I know that SOB Claver," it read. "He's here in Oklahoma. I have a lot to tell you." Kathy was stunned. Josh's father, KW Claver, had moved his family to Oklahoma after he retired on disability. He had been a sheriff's deputy in Santa Clara County, California. What did this stranger know about KW? KW and Kathy had met in the 1970s at a country western bar, but never married, and ended up battling for custody of Josh for the last 4 years of the boy's life. Could the person behind this Facebook message answer the questions that had haunted Kathy for 25 years? Could she help her understand what happened to Josh that night in his father's barn in San Martin, California, just down the freeway from San Jose? Investigators back then quickly concluded it was a suicide, but Kathy never believed it. Every morning she woke up thinking of Josh, and nearly every day she was either updating her Justice for Joshua blog or sending off angry emails to any law enforcement agency that might listen. Even the California Attorney General's office and other agencies would review the case, but nothing changed. Kathy had been hospitalized for a breakdown and finally told herself she would try to move on.
The pain is just unbearable. I feel like I'm tugging on him with my pain all the time, and I don't want to do that to him.
Then The mysterious Facebook message arrived. With trepidation, Kathy picked up the phone and called the number in Atoka, Oklahoma. On the other end of the line was Leanne Henry. She was an ex-girlfriend of KW's and a registered nurse at the local health clinic. Leanne told Josh's mother something she had waited years to hear.
I know what happened. That's how I found out. She goes, I know what happened to your son about his death, and I have stuff to tell you.
KW and Bobby Claver had recently divorced, Leanne told her, and she and Bobby had become friends in their mutual disdain for KW. In a heart-to-heart, Bobby, the ex-wife, told Leanne, the ex-girlfriend, what happened when she came home that dreadful night in 1989. KW had told her that he and Josh were in the barn, that Josh had been upset, and that the father had hugged his son real tight to calm him down. But here's the thing. Bobby long feared it was worse than that, Leanne told Josh's mom, Kathy, that maybe KW had used his police training to restrain the boy and squeeze the life out of him, then panicked. The details would shake Kathy to the core. I could barely breathe, she told me.
Josh was hysterical. It took, like the heavens to open up to calm him down, But KW was telling Bobby that he calmed him down. So, I told, the investigators and the DA, I said, what? And then a calm down Josh. KW goes back in the house, and Josh is all calmed down, hanging out outside, whips himself up into a frenzy after he thinks he's safe, that his dad's made him feel that he's safe, that he whips himself up into a frenzy and then goes into the barn and hangs himself.
Leanne didn't want to talk to me, but Kathy told me that what she heard from Leanne was so upsetting, so revelatory, that Kathy and her husband Dennis called the sheriff's department in San Jose, again, urging them to investigate. After years of getting nowhere, they suddenly found an unexpectedly receptive audience. It turns out that some in Sheriff Laurie Smith's office had wondered whether Bobby, once unleashed from the emotional and legal bonds of marriage, would have something to reveal. Josh's stepfather, Dennis Atkins, remembers Under Sheriff John Hirakawa once told them that the fate of the Clavers' marriage could be a key.
If Bobby and KW ever divorce, that's when they might be able to get Bobby to talk and we could find out about what happened. And so we called them up, and surprisingly, he rather proudly stated that they already knew that they had been divorced.
Suddenly, 25 years after Josh died, and after so many desperate pleas from his mother, the investigation was back on. The sheriff would send the county coroner back to the barn in San Martin and an investigator to interview Bobby in Winona, Minnesota. Would she tell her story? Would she open up? Did she know something more about what happened to Josh in the barn that night? Something she saw, something she heard? I also headed to Minnesota to find out. That's why I was sitting on the side of the highway, finally stopped, taking this call from the local police.
I know that you guys are from California and trying to get some interviews with this one person. If
Right.
she does not want you guys to contact her again.
Of course. Bobby Claver wasn't prepared for a reporter to come knocking on her door earlier that morning, nearly 3 decades after Josh's death. She's 57 now and had moved here to start a new chapter in her life, away from KW. She had left her career at the California Highway Patrol years ago and had started working as a nursing manager in Winona. When I stopped by, before the officer called, she had opened up the door of her bungalow just a crack. I could barely make her out, but for her long dark hair. I started to explain why her story about what happened that night was so important to so many people. She choked up. When I got home that night, she told me, what I came home to was not good. She mentioned KW. She complained about Kathy. Then she apologized and shut the door. And just like that, the woman who might unlock a 28-year-old mystery was saying no.
Just abide by her wishes, that'd be great.
Maybe it was silly to think she would talk to me, but I thought back to what retired prosecutor Dale Sanderson had told me when I found him watering his yard in San Jose. I asked him where he would turn to answer the lingering questions about this case. Bobby Claver, he told me. She could be a wealth of information. But after she had apologized and closed the door the first time, I tried writing her a note, asking her to reconsider. Before I slipped it under her doormat, I read it to Li Po Ching, the Mercury News photographer who came here with me. Dear Bobby, I'm sorry I upset you when I knocked on your door this morning. I can't imagine the enduring pain of losing Josh and coming upon what you did that night. I'm trying to get to the truth about what happened to Josh. I've talked to investigators, people who know KW and knew Josh. It's a case that has bothered so many for so long. I know you weren't there when Josh died, but you know about Josh, the kind of kid he was, and what led to that night. And I know what you think happened. I would hate for you. She must have seen me from the window as I tucked it under her welcome mat. She came around the side of the house and yelled at me to get off her property. So I did, quickly. Of course, I understood her reluctance. What were the odds she would open up to me if I showed up on her doorstep after all these years, especially with so much pain in her past? Remember in Chapter 2, when I had talked to some of KW's fellow deputies back in California? They had painted a picture of a responsible, independent law enforcement officer who got along well with his colleagues and showed no signs of aggression. But to judge KW from many of the women in his life is another story. They had all fallen hard for the 6'2" cowboy with a bushy mustache who won big silver belt buckles at calf roping rodeos and slaughtered farm animals on the side. But in the end, they all felt wronged. Remember Judy Werner, KW's first wife, who helped raise Josh when he was a toddler? She had told me she had left him after their marriage turned violent.
KW is the type, he's like a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde. One minute he's okay, and the next minute he snaps.
To assess KW from the documents, transcripts, and handwritten narratives I had found through the courthouse website in Oklahoma is to see a violent, unstable, intimidating man who filled his body with steroids and his house with guns. I discovered 4 separate requests for restraining orders lodged against KW since 2010. One from his ex-wife Bobby, one from ex-girlfriend Leanne, and one from each of his and Bobby's 2 grown daughters. Bobby wrote hers sometime after KW asked for a divorce, on their 25th wedding anniversary. He has controlled me and bullied me our entire marriage, she wrote in 2010. I live in fear for myself and my children that his unpredictable, violent behavior to me and my children will continue to escalate and cause serious or fatal results to us. Bobby's fears were even more chilling, knowing that investigators were, once again, looking into Josh's death. In requesting a restraining order, one daughter wrote that KW was unbalanced, that he had slapped her, and she was terrified of being alone with him. The other wrote that she so feared her father that while he was attempting to kick her out of the house on her 25th birthday, she grabbed a handful of kitchen knives for protection because, as she put it, I know what KW is capable of from past physical abuse as a child. KW has since reconciled with his daughters, and he denied the accusations against him. When it came to his exes, he filed his own request for restraining orders. In one, he called his wife the aggressor and claimed she had threatened to kill him to cash in on his life insurance policy. In dueling restraining order requests with Leanne, he was the first to file, saying that she stalked him and lit his hay bales on fire and begged her to take him back in a romantic relationship. Leanne countered in court papers that KW threatened to kill her, that it would be easy to, quote, lay in wait on Richardson's Hill and shoot me getting out of my car at my house with a scope and rifle. Neither restraining order was granted, but Leanne was in the middle of this legal showdown when she reached out to Josh's mother in the Facebook message. I had to say, it made me wonder, with every interview of KW's exes, with every court document I uncovered, Could the suspicions of these former wives and lovers have been misguided and driven by revenge? Or did KW's abusive tendencies, documented in Josh's child custody case and this new round of court documents filed long after his death, give credence to their darkest fears? Kathy always believed that Bobby knew more than she was telling, and that Facebook message sure seemed to suggest it. Now I had come all this way to Winona, Minnesota, to find out. But here I was on the side of the road, clearly striking out.
Apparently she doesn't want to talk to you guys.
Yes.
And she says she wants to talk. If she says she wants to talk to you, she will call you, but it doesn't look that way though.
Look, I've been a reporter for 30 years, so believe me, a door closed in my face, a call from a cop, there's no coming back from that. So, discouraged and out of options, we decided to stop at an apple farm along the Mississippi River. I needed to contemplate where to go from here. I had my feet up and was watching a little train take visitors through the orchard when my phone rang. It was Bobby Claver. She had read my note and asked, "What do you want to know?" She agreed to meet in the lobby of my motel. Let's just say I couldn't get to my car fast enough. When we met that evening, she was carrying a bag of framed family portraits. One of Josh with a playful smile standing next to her, another of KW with Josh and their younger children.
He was part of our family.
We settled into chairs in the busy lobby. That's why you'll hear voices in the background throughout this emotional interview.
He was a big brother. And he was a very loving boy.
Can you tell me more about him? What kind of kid he was?
Active. Typical boy. Climbing fences, trees, playing G.I. Joes, crawling in the rocks. He liked to swim.
Did you do family things together? What kinds of?
We went to Disneyland. We would go to Lake Tahoe to play in the snow, to ski.
How would you describe Josh's relationship with his dad?
They would go out and do things out with the animals and out back. He was a country kid, so he would go out and play. He would follow his dad around.
For much of our interview, Bobby was on guard, hesitant to relive painful memories, reluctant to share too much. And she was annoyed, frankly, that Josh's mother wouldn't let it all go.
I don't like the fact that Kathy has done this because she was not there. She did not have to give him CPR. She did not make the calls. She claims that she never knew what happened. And statements were given to the sheriff's department when they came out. Statements were given to the paramedics when they came out. And information was provided to her. But she doesn't have these pictures in her mind.
Bobby has spent years in therapy, she told me, trying to replace the horrifying images with pleasant ones. When we sat down, she refused to speculate about what may have happened that winter evening before she got home. She said a sheriff's detective had come to Minnesota recently to question her. She would only say what she knew to be true, what she actually witnessed. But even that made for some shocking answers. Could you tell me what happened that night? I know you had been in court that day. At that time, Josh was spending weekdays with the Clavers and weekends with his mother, Kathy, her husband, and their 2 younger children.
She was supposed to have him home by a certain time on Sunday night. And when he didn't arrive, a call was placed to her. And she said she wasn't bringing him home.
The next day, Josh's parents were back in court. We heard his mother's version of what happened in Chapter 1. that Josh had told her he didn't want to go back to KW's, that when the court said he had to return to his father's that Monday night, the Clavers were supposed to let Kathy speak to Josh before they picked him up to explain what was happening, that Josh was hysterical and KW dragged the boy from Kathy's house while his grandmother was watching him. But Bobby remembers none of that. Here's her recollection. What was that like, picking him up? How was he?
He was fine. We picked him up. He was in the car. KW had told him in the car on the way home that he would need to talk to the judge tomorrow, meaning Tuesday the next day. He said to Josh, "You will have to talk to the judge tomorrow."
Remember, this was the first time in the 4-year custody battle that Josh was supposed to meet one-on-one with a judge. And what did Josh say?
He became very quiet, and he was upset. He said he didn't want to talk to the judge. And I just changed the subject and started talking about other things.
When they got back to their home in San Martin, Bobby said she left KW and Josh at home while she drove to pick up her young son and daughter, Josh's half-brother and half-sister, from their babysitter. She picked up a pizza. When she returned, KW was sitting inside the house.
I asked KW where Josh was, and he said he was in the barn taking care of the rabbits.
And what did you think of that?
I told him that there wasn't any rabbit food. It was in the back of my car. And I would have to go and get him rabbit food, and I said, I'll just go and get him and bring him in. KW said, "Let's go, I'll help you carry the rabbit food."
When I asked Bobby what happened next, she became emotional and asked our photographer to turn off his video camera. Then she continued.
We walked up to the barn. KW was on one side of me, and I walked towards the area where the rabbits were kept. KW had the big sack of feed over his shoulder, and we were just talking. I don't even remember about what, and all of a sudden the rabbit feed was on the ground, and KW said, "Oh my God, Josh." And by the time I caught view, he was already in the butcher room. And I ran around, and he was attempting to get Josh down. Josh was in the butcher room, and he was hanging with a horse lead rope that had been tied over a meat rack.
The clamp on the end of the rope, that is usually hooked to a horse's harness, may have been fed through the rope, she said, forming a loop around Josh's neck. But it was hard for her to remember for sure.
By the time I got in there, he was pulling him down. KW was pulling him down. The railing wasn't that tall. He wasn't completely unhooked. And he was trying to cut him down, cut the rope off. And when I got there, I told him, I said, "You stay here and start CPR, and I will go run in the house and call."
She called 911, then a friend to pick up her kids, tied up the dogs and opened the gates for the paramedics to get in, then ran back to the barn.
KW was crying. He was trying to do CPR. And then I guess because it wasn't working and he would get upset, he would stop, and then I would get him started again. It was very chaotic that night.
Did you wonder how he could have done it?
I wondered a lot of things. I don't remember what I was specifically thinking. I was in a state of shock. There was just a lot going on, a lot of confusion that night. I wondered why. He seemed to have been doing better.
Did you have any doubt that he killed himself?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
So what happened that night before Bobby returned home? She only knows what KW would later tell her. Did you ask KW what had happened?
I did.
And what did he say?
He said that he went out to do something in the barn. Josh went out to do the rabbits. Josh got upset and was crying. KW went over and gave him a big hug, and he said that Josh calmed down. And then he left Josh to take care of the rabbits, and he went back in the house. And that's where he was when I got home, was in the house.
The big hug made me think, though. Didn't Gilbert Sandoval, one of KW's stepsons from his first marriage, tell me that KW wasn't the type of father who hugged his children? I asked Bobby. When he said he gave Josh a big hug, did you think that was something he would normally do?
I honestly cannot tell you what I was thinking at the time. I don't remember.
When I asked what kind of father KW was, Bobby wouldn't say. She said she never witnessed any abuse. She said the story that Josh supposedly told at school, that his father knocked him down the stairs into the garbage cans, didn't make sense. KW and Bobby were in Nevada getting married, she said, and had left Josh at her mother's house in Sacramento, where the boy had bruised his legs while crawling in peat rocks, playing with G.I. Joes.
I know there was question about that, pushing downstairs into some garbage cans, and I said, we don't have any outside garbage cans, and we don't have any stairs. We would take everything to the dump.
And here's something significant. She wouldn't repeat what Leanne said Bobby had told her, that she feared KW might have hugged Josh too tightly, maybe put him in a chokehold to calm him down, and then staged it as a suicide.
I don't recall saying that.
Do you recall thinking it?
I don't recall. I'm sorry, I don't. I blocked a lot of things out after that night, and it took quite a few years.
Suddenly, I was left wondering if the story that helped relaunch the investigation and provoked so many emotions in Josh's troubled mother was unraveling. But Bobby's answer to my next question was striking. Do you think KW had something to do with Josh's death?
I'm not going to comment on anything of... I don't have any evidence, and I wasn't there. He never said anything to me.
Are you afraid to tell me? Is there something that I should know?
My personal life will remain my personal life. I've given you the information about Josh to the best of my recollection. I was not there that night. I cannot come up with information that I don't have.
Do you think KW is capable of murder?
I don't know if he could... I don't know.
Do you think he killed Josh?
I don't know.
She couldn't say no. She had been married to this man for 25 years, raised 3 children with him, and when asked if she thought he killed Josh, she couldn't say no. But she couldn't say yes either. Is there anything that you want to tell me, I mean, for better or for worse, about him?
He is the father of my 3 children, and I will do nothing to hurt my children. If I had proof or evidence or anything to bring forward, I would have done it a long time ago.
She said it was possible the original conclusion of the sheriff's department had been right all along, that Josh committed suicide. She remembers the message Josh wrote in his school journal months before about wishing he were dead. She said it shook her, that she called suicide prevention to ask for help, that she got him into counseling. The Clavers kept their guns and butchering knives locked up, she said, but she didn't think the ropes in the barn were a danger.
The ropes were lead ropes. I wouldn't have thought anybody could do anything with them. They were thick, coarse lead ropes.
It's time for Josh's mother to move on, she said, and reliving that night is too painful for her.
I really cannot keep rehashing this. This is not healthy for me. It must be hell for Kathy because she wasn't there as a mother, but I was. And I couldn't save him. And I could not revive him and bring him back. And I can't keep going through this. So if there's nothing there, then it has to be let go. He has to be put to rest.
Bobby had spent more than an hour with me here, but I thought back to earlier that afternoon, standing at the door of her home, when I first tried convincing her to talk with me. She had insisted then that she wasn't the one with the answers. If you want to know what happened, she told me, ask KW. He was the only one there that night. Next, on Hanging.
You were bamboozled, madam, into coming out here.
I never got a sense that I was on the wrong side. I never got a sense that the child wasn't better off with KW.
Normal guy, seems to me like. He's a little different, but he's from California.
KW!
Why do you do a story about Josh?
Hanging is an original podcast series from the Mercury News in San Jose. This podcast was hosted and reported by Julia Prodis Sulek. That's me. It was produced by my editor, Mike Frankel, and our sound engineer, Paul Baca. Videos and photography by Lipo Ching. Additional video production by Tor Haugen and Sarah Dussault. Our website is designed by Pi, and Mike Mayer designed the series for the newspaper. Bert Robinson is our managing editor, and Neil Chase is our executive editor. To make sure you hear every chapter, subscribe to Hanging wherever you get your podcasts. To see photos, videos, and documents, and to read the series and comment on this podcast, go to www.mercurynews.com/hanging. That's Mercury, like the planet, news.com/hanging. Thanks for listening.